Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, Hare Krishna, dear devotees. We are starting reading from the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and today is the last verse of the 9th chapter. So we have the verse. Let's pull it up. Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mam evaishyasi satyam te mam evaishyasi satyam te pratijane priyosi me. We have a different verse? Kripasinda Prabhu told me it was 9th chapter. I mean, there. Yeah. I can switch to this verse. Is it this or? I mean, the correct form is 9th chapter going on right now. I think. Sure. I'm just pulling up Vedabase right now. Because Kripasinda Prabhu told me about this 9th chapter, last verse. Manmanava Madbhakto. Yeah, okay. Yes, Mame Vaishyasi Yuktvaivam. Manmana Bhava Madbhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru Mam Evaishyasi Yuktvaivam Atmanam Mat Parayanaha. So, anyone would like to recite? Manmana Bhava Madbhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru Mame Vaishyasi Yuktvaivam Namat Parayanaha. Mataji's? Okay. Word meanings. Mad Manaha. Always thinking of me. Bhava. Become. Mat. My. Bhaktaha. Devotee. Mat. My. Yaji. Worshipper. Mam. Unto me. Namaskuru. Offer obeisances. Mam. Unto me. Eva. Completely. Eshyasi. You will come. Yuktva. Being absorbed. Evam. Thus. Atmanam. Your soul. Mat Parayanaha. Devoted to me. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace of Acharnarvanda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Engage your mind always in thinking of me. Become my devotee. Offer obeisances to me and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. Purport. In this verse, it is clearly indicated that Krishna consciousness is the only means of being delivered from the clutches of this contaminated material world. Sometimes unscrupulous commentators distort the meaning of what is clearly stated here, that all devotional service should be offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Unfortunately, unscrupulous commentators divert the mind of the reader to that which is not at all feasible. Such commentators do not know that there is no difference between Krishna's mind and Krishna. Krishna is not an ordinary human being. He is the absolute truth. His body, his mind, and he himself are one and absolute. It is stated in the Kurma Purana, as it is quoted by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami in his Anubhashya comments on Chaitanya Charitamrita, 5th chapter Adi Leela, verses 41 to 48. He quotes, Deha Dehi Vibhedo Yam Neshware Vidyate Kvachit. This means that there is no difference in Krishna, the Supreme Lord, between himself and his body, but because the commentators do not know this science of Krishna, they hide Krishna and divide his personality from his mind or from his body. Although this sheer ignorance of the science of Krishna, some men make profit out of misleading people. There are some who are demonic. They also think of Krishna, but enviously, just like King Kamsa, Krishna's uncle. He was also thinking of Krishna always, but he thought of Krishna as his enemy. He was always in anxiety, wondering when Krishna would come to kill him. That kind of thinking will not help us. One should be thinking of Krishna in devotional love. That's his bhakti. One should cultivate the knowledge of Krishna continuously. What is that favorable cultivation? It is to learn from a bona fide teacher. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we have several times explained that his body is not material, but it is eternal. Blissful knowledge, this kind of talk about Krishna, will help one become a devotee. Understanding Krishna otherwise, from the wrong source, will prove fruitless. One should therefore engage his mind in the eternal form, the primal form of Krishna, with conviction in his heart that Krishna is the Supreme. He should engage himself in worship. There are hundreds of thousands of temples in India for the worship of Krishna, and devotional service is practiced there. When such practice is made, one has to offer obeisances to Krishna. One should lower his head before the deity and engage his mind, his body, his activities, everything. That will make one fully absorbed in Krishna without deviation. This will help one transfer to Krishna Loka. One should not be deviated by unscrupulous commentators. One must engage in the 9 different processes of devotional service, beginning with hearing and chanting about Krishna. Pure devotional service is the highest achievement of human society. The 7th and 8th chapters of Bhagavad Gita have explained pure devotional service to the Lord that is free from speculative knowledge, mystic yoga, and fruitive activities. Those who are not purely sanctified may be attracted by different features of the Lord, like the impersonal Brahmajyotir and localized Paramatma. But a pure devotee directly takes to the service of the Supreme Lord. There is a beautiful poem about Krishna in which it is clearly stated that any person who is engaged in the worship of the demigods is most unintelligent and cannot achieve at any time the supreme award of Krishna. The devotee in the beginning may sometimes fall from this standard, but still he should be considered superior to all other philosophers and yogis. One who always engages in Krishna consciousness should be understood to be a perfectly saintly person. His accidental non-devotional activities will diminish, and he will soon be situated without any doubt in complete perfection. The pure devotee has no actual chance to fall down because the Supreme Godhead personally takes care of his pure devotees. Therefore, The intelligent person should take directly to the process of Krishna consciousness and happily live in this material world. He will eventually receive the supreme award of Krishna. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 9th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, or Srimad Bhagavad Gita, in the matter of the most confidential knowledge. So we end chapter 9 with this thinking. Let's read the translation again. Manmana bhavamad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskaru mame vaishasi yuktavaivam atmanam matparayanaha. Engage your mind always in thinking of me, become my devotee, offer obeisances to me and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. So that's what Krishna emphasizes here. So we can frame this whole lecture into like 4 different categories that Krishna talks about here. First of all, we start with the first line, which is man mana. Krishna says man mana, which means give me your mind. So mat mana, which means mana is thinking, mana is mind. So in your mind, you should be always thinking of me. That's the first injunction here in this verse, which is man mana. And if we move ahead, then we see the second phrase, which is mad bhakta, and it means that Krishna is asking to give me your identity in a way, like bhakta, become my devotee. So in the first line, he says man mana and mad bhakta. Think of me and become my devotee. So the formula to becoming a devotee, he answers with the first word. So he actually gives you the direction, but he gives this direction beforehand. His directive is to become his bhakta, become his devotee. And the direction is that how do we become a devotee? We become a devotee by thinking about him. So he gives the direction before giving the directive. Become a devotee by thinking, always thinking about him. That's what the first line says. Then we move down. Then Krishna says the next injunction is madhyaji, which means give me your worship. Like treat me as your worshipper, become my worshipper. That's what Krishna says. Yaji, that's the verb. It's the verb in Sanskrit. It means to worship. So Krishna says, mat yaji, become my worshipper. And then he says, mat namaskaru. It means pay your obeisances unto me. So here we can see the directive is to matyaji, which means to worship. The directive is to worship, and the direction is how do we worship? By, which is the word? Yes, exactly, namaskaru. So it's like Krishna is offering, telling us what to do, and he's also simultaneously telling us how to do it. You see, so that's how we decode the formula here. That's how we break down the verse into knowing, understanding the essence. So let's look again at the first line, because it's just 4 words in the first line and 4 words in the second line, but it's so deep. You see, you can carve out a whole philosophy based on these few lines. So man mana bhava mad bhakto. So Krishna says, become my devotee. Mad bhakto. How do we become a devotee? By having your mind fixed in me, man mana. Then he says, madhyaji, worship me. And how do we worship him? By surrendering, by paying our obeisances, by doing namaskar to the deity, to Krishna. And then Krishna says, mind, heart, life, everything. So Krishna is asking for all 4 that we have in this life, in this world with us, which is our mind, which is our heart, which is our life and our actions. So we can, one may question, why does Krishna end the 9th chapter like this? Because the 9th chapter is entitled to be the most confidential knowledge. So you have, imagine a person comes up to you and gives you a booklet that's titled The Most Confidential Knowledge, the most secret knowledge, and you're like automatically very inclined, oh, what is this very secret knowledge that no one knows? It's secret, you know? It's like someone is coming up and giving this knowledge, which is very secret, which is very well hidden, well kept. And now I'm able to grasp the secret. I'm so lucky. So one may wonder, like, the most secret knowledge in this universe, and the last verse, the last thing in this most secret knowledge must be something very paramount importance, you know, the most secret thing in the universe, and the very last thing, which is the most supposed to be the ending thing, the conclusion, is supposed to address everything in a way, you know, it's like the condensed form in a way. You're concluding what you're trying to say. So the conclusion of this whole confidential knowledge is this. It's just few words that Krishna is saying. That is the conclusion. That is the most confidential knowledge. That's how Krishna concludes. So we should try to understand the context here first and try to understand why does Krishna end chapter 9 like this. So chapter 9, as we know from the first verse, Krishna says, Raja Vidya Raja Guhya, which means Krishna says, Raja Vidya, this is the king of knowledge, and this is the most confidential knowledge. He says that in the beginning, before starting to speak more about this confidential knowledge. He says this is the king of knowledge. And Krishna has explained that he's the source. He is the source of everything. He's the maintainer. He's the destroyer. Everything rests upon him. That's in the next 10th chapter, he says. But before saying the next thing in the 10th chapter, where Krishna says that I am the source of everything, everything comes from me. Everything gets destroyed by me. That's what Krishna says in the 10th chapter. So before Krishna positions himself as the creator, as the annihilator, as the maintainer, as the source of everything, before he presents his position as the ultimate everything, he, in the 9th chapter, tells us about his devotion, in essence, that before understanding the position of Krishna as the ultimate, where he's the creator and everything, he tells us how we achieve him, how we do our devotional service in this most confidential knowledge that he's giving us. So, and why is that? And it is because even the most sinful person, if they give up their sinful activities and wholeheartedly they devote their actions unto him, they can be considered saintly and will attain perfection. That's how Krishna says, and that's how Prabhupada also says in the purports, that even if there is a saintly person and he does commit some crime, one should not be harsh upon him, and one should like try to forgive in a sense that even a saintly person who has committed a certain kind of mistake and has to fall down, he is still in a auspicious position. That's what Prabhupada says in the purport. We just read that, and that's what Krishna means before saying this verse. In the last verse, in the verse previous to this verse, Krishna says that "Name bhaktya pranashyati." That's the verse before saying this, which means my devotee never perishes. That means even if a little advancement into this path of bhakti, he will always remember that. So this whole progress, this is our journey. So in this journey, we're bound to make mistakes because we're in this material world. We are constantly attacked by Maya and karma, and we are helpless at times, and we are bound to make mistakes. So that's what Krishna says here, like, this material world, we are bound to make mistakes, and one should not feel inferior or discouraged by these mistakes, and one should try to strive to be good. That's what Krishna says. Name bhaktya pranashyati, my devotee never perishes, even if he does a sinful deed, or even if he does a sinful action out of influences of Maya or influences of his karma. He again has the chance to come back. He again has the chance to repent and strive to be good day after day. It's a whole journey. It's a whole progress. It doesn't happen in a few days. It takes years and years of discipline and years of bhakti and years of unconditional love towards Krishna. So we decode the first line, which is man mana. Krishna says, always think of me. So Krishna doesn't say, think of me every Sunday, think of me every Tuesday. Krishna says, always. Krishna says, always think of me. And from Nectar of Devotion, we see that the classes of devotional lives. We see Uttama Bhakti as the topmost level of devotion. And that kind of devotion, the topmost level of devotion, is the most favorable. Devotional service to Krishna is the most favorable because it is free from all kinds of karma and jnana. It is that kind of devotion is the topmost, and it is considered to be the most purest kind because it is not made inauspicious by our karma, by our ego, false ego, by our extra jnana that we don't need, because all we have in that state, that topmost level, all we have is pure love for Krishna. That's all we need. We don't need our intelligence. We don't need our ego in this devotional life. All we need is love, as we see from the Krishna book that there is. If we open the first few pages, that's what George Harrison, when he was associating with Prabhupada, that's what he writes there. All we need is love, and in bracket, it's Krishna. And so devotional service to Krishna that is favorable, that is free from material desires, that is not covered by karma and other processes, that is the topmost devotion. And how can we understand who have had this kind of top devotional life? We can understand by the stories that we hear from Srimad Bhagavatam. Most famously, we hear the story of Ambarisha Maharaj. So King Ambarisha, he was a king, and we use the example of Ambarisha as a great person who was always fixed in Krishna. His mind was always thinking of Krishna. So the story of Ambarisha, King Ambarisha, was that he was having this great ceremony, yajna, and he invited so many sages and everything, and he also invited the fiery sage Durvasa Muni. And Durvasa Muni, he's known to have a very, very high temper. He's supposed to be a very hot-headed sage. He gets angry very quickly. So that's his characteristic. And he got very angry at Ambarisha because Ambarisha Maharaj, he was always fixed in Krishna, that he could not devote his attention towards the sage, and the sage kind of felt insulted, and he felt in a condition of rage and anger. He chastised Ambarisha Maharaj, and King Ambarisha, he gladly accepted it, but King Ambarisha accepted the harsh words of the sage, but the Lord Vishnu, he could not accept it, the inhumane treatment of his devotee. He could not tolerate it. So he sent his Sudarshan Chakra, his disc, after the sage to teach the sage a lesson. And now the sage is running after his life. The sage runs everywhere in this whole material universe, from the sky to the land to the lower planets, everywhere. He just keeps running and running. He goes to Brahmaloka, asks for Lord Brahma to save him. Brahma says, okay, it's released by Vishnu's chakra, it's Vishnu. I cannot do anything. So he goes away, he goes to Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva also says, I cannot do anything here. You have insulted Lord Vishnu's pure devotee in a way. And he could not do anything. So finally, what Durvasa had to do, he had to go back towards the lotus feet of Ambarisha Maharaj and beg for forgiveness, because even Lord Vishnu, Durvasa Muni even went to Vishnu, and Lord Vishnu says, I cannot do anything. The Sudarshan chakra is there to protect my devotees. And because you insulted my devotee, it got activated. Now I cannot do anything. It's meant to protect my devotee. So the only person who can save you is my devotee. So go and ask forgiveness from King Ambarisha. So that's what Durvasa does. He goes back and falls on the feet of Ambarisha and begs for forgiveness. And his life is spared. So that's how we see from exalted personalities how they were always fixed. They have always fixed their minds on Krishna. And so in essence, Krishna says that I am controlled by his devotees. My heart is with them. And Krishna says I am not independent in the sense that he's controlled by his devotees. Just as the story of Krishna in Hastinapura from Mahabharata, when he was in the house of Vidura. Vidura's wife, out of love and ecstasy, she was trying to feed Krishna bananas. But in a trance of love and ecstasy, she peeled the bananas and she didn't feed the bananas, but she kind of fed the banana, the skin. And Krishna didn't judge. He just accepted because she was offering out of pure love. And of course, she was not in the proper state of mind because her mind, she was in complete ecstasy. She could not realize she's feeding the Lord banana skin. But Krishna ate the banana skin. That's how we see that Krishna is not independent. He's in the control of his devotees out of love. See? So, and then we see that now one may ask, what is the practical way that we can achieve this praise of man-mana? Always thinking of Krishna. How is it practical? How can we practically do it in our lives? So first of all, we all do japa. We all do our meditation in the morning. So during japa, our conscious effort should be to hear the Mahamantra that we're speaking, we're saying, we're chanting. So our effort here should be to hear, because when we hear attentively, that's how Krishna manifests in our heart. Krishna doesn't just manifest by sitting down in a straight posture and just thinking about him, because it's impossible in this realm. Okay, there can be some exceptions who are very disciplined people, but for people of this age, with our current frickling mind, if you try to sit down and remember about Krishna, within 2 seconds, you'll remember about, oh, I have this work left, oh, I have to do that, oh, I have to do that. Our mind is very reckless. We compare the mind, the speed of the mind is the most fastest thing in the world. You're here, and all of a sudden you're in America. It's the fastest thing in the world. The speed of mind is very reckless. It's very hard to control the mind. So you cannot just sit down and think about Krishna, from the get-go. It doesn't work like that. So the proper process is to first listen. Shravanam, hearing. That's the first limb of bhakti. That's how you start your bhakti, by listening, by hearing. So Shravanam, you hear what you're chanting. You chant your japa, even if you cannot think of Krishna, even if so many things are running in our mind, don't think about all of that. You should not focus into thinking about that. Your focus should be primarily on hearing. That you are consciously hearing the mantra you're chanting. You're saying Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. You are hearing the mantra. And attentively, you're hearing every word. So when you try to hear every word, you'll automatically be in a line of a focused meditation. You'll automatically happen that you are in a disciplined meditative position then, because now you're hearing the mantras, and your mind won't be, freckless anymore, because now you have a job which is in a way, it's not so subtle like imagining, because if you try to imagine, the mind is very fickle. It can't let you imagine properly. But when you hear, it's not so subtle. All you need to do is hear the things you're saying, which is the mantra. Exactly. And then And then what are the other ways apart from japa that we can think of Krishna always? Exactly. So we look around in our environment, we see what we're doing, we see the devotees of Krishna, and it reminds us of Krishna. We see instruments, and it reminds of Krishna. We see books, it reminds us of Krishna. So everything we see around us, we should try to find Krishna, or at least try to connect it with Krishna. So in that way, we are always thinking of Krishna. That's a formula of how to do it. and we can see the things around us. We can see the nature. We can see the moon. Krishna says, "I am the moon." That's the reason. Like in this 9th chapter, Krishna is setting us up what to do. And in the 10th and 11th chapters, where Krishna describes his opulence, Krishna says, "Oh, I am in men, I am the king. In animals, I am the lion. In fishes, I am the shark. In trees, I am the banyan tree." So Krishna kind of gives the principal component in each of his creations, so that we can link, each and every part of his creation to him. So that's how Krishna lays the foundation in this chapter first. He gives us the direction here. And in the later chapters, Jai Shri Prahlad Shringadeva Ki Jai. So, and then in the later chapters, he gives us this formula, how to link everything around us with Krishna, because everything is Krishna's opulence. And anything that's Krishna's opulence is Krishna himself. That's how we should see it. And that's the thing. So we move now to the next portion of the shloka, which is Mad Bhakto. So till now we were talking about Manmana, which is always thinking of Krishna. But now we see Mad Bhakto. So how do we understand this phrase or this order, become my devotee? Like, this is a direct injunction, this is a directive from Krishna. He's saying, become my devotee. So people may think that, thinking of God is especially in times of difficulty. When we have some kind of a problem, we are in some difficult situation, we're in danger. That's when we think of God. That's how a general perception of God is. Oh, there is a problem. Oh my goodness. You see? So that's how the general thinking about God is. Just a believer of God or an admirer of God is just having this feeling that he's always there to protect me. It's just that. But one should try to achieve more than that. A devotee is not just someone who acknowledges that God exists. A devotee is someone whose identity of his life is tied with him. So our identity should not be just believers, or in a way that we believe God exists. Our identity should be to serve that God. Because eternally, our identity is always service. As eternal souls, our entire identity is based upon service to the Supreme. Because we are part of the Supreme, and the particles, we are particles of that part. So as particles, our nature, our base nature, our identity is to serve. And to understand this, we can also have the example of Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj, what did he do? He can be understood as the biggest example of this verse. He was always Manmana, he was always thinking of Krishna. Mad Bhakto, that's why he is the greatest devotee. Madhyaji, he was always worshipping of Krishna. He was always thinking and worshipping Krishna. How was he worshipping? Namaskuru. Prahlad Maharaj was always thinking, chanting the glories of Krishna. Prahlad Maharaj is the living embodiment of this verse. And that's how we understand this connection here. And then we see the later half of the verse, which is Hare Krishna, being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. That's the later half. So the first half, we're being told to do things and how to do it. And in the later half, we're being told of the consequences of doing it. So what do you get if you do that? So Krishna says, by doing that, by being completely absorbed in me, surely you'll come to me. So that's what Krishna says. Okay, you want to get away from this material world, you want to get away from this pain and suffering, you have to come to me. And how do you come to me? By becoming my devotee. And how do you become my devotee? By always thinking of me and worshipping me. So it's like a complete power package formula here. It's so amazing how one can go into such a depth of knowledge from a simple verse, which is not so simple because apparently it is the most confidential knowledge. And that's how we understand this nature of devotional life, which is to serve Krishna, to serve his devotees. And then so here when we try to understand our objective here, which is Mam Namaskaru, the fourth phrase here is Mam Namaskaru. That's our objective. We have to offer our obeisances to Krishna. That's how we become a devotee. That's our objective here. And to achieve this certain objective, Krishna gives us this task that to kind of pay obeisances, it means one has to agree the person that we are trying to pay an obeisances to is superior. That means we kind of have to forsake our ego. We are sacrificing our false ego. Because if we are paying obeisances, that means we are kind of putting ourselves into this position that we are lower than the person we are trying to pay our obeisances to. So we are kind of giving up our false ego and trying to surrender, trying to pay our obeisance. So how can we it's like this direct attack into this whole conception that I'm the controller, I'm the center, I'm the topmost person. So why should I have to bow down to a deity? So that's how it attacks this very basic thinking of false ego. So what's the best example that we can think of? Like a personality that was full of pride and false ego, and he got humbled and he paid his obeisances unto Krishna. What's the biggest example? There are so many, exactly. But one of the most practical in a sense, the most convincing example is the story of Brahma. The Brahma Vimohan Leela, where Krishna kind of humbled Brahma and made him realize his position and made him realize what he was doing, because Brahma, in condition of his pride and in condition of his strength, that he's the creator, he's the topmost person in this universe, how can anyone challenge Brahma? In that conditional thinking, he didn't realize that the person he was trying to mess with is the Supreme Lord himself. He's the origin of Brahma himself. He forgot his own father in this trance of extreme pride and falsity. So what did Krishna do? Krishna just performed this illusory feat and made Brahma realize what a tiny speck of dust he is in this whole creation of Krishna. This tiny speck of dust in his whole unlimited opulence. That's how Krishna humbles us. And then again, after Brahma, there's another story of how Krishna again humbled a certain personality, and that was Indra. Krishna loves humbling people. That's his side job. Like we can dig out numerous stories of Krishna humbling, and it's very funny the way he humbles, because it's a very crushing defeat, because the person is very puffed up. He's very puffed up of his opulences. He's very puffed up of his energies. He's very puffed up, and then Krishna just he bursts the balloon, there's this loud, tumultuous sound like a bursting cracker. That's the bursting of his pride. It's so satisfying how Krishna bursts the pride of his devotees. Because essentially they are not demons, they are devotees of Krishna. And sometimes they get, as devotees, that's the main thing, that's how the most important instruction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which was Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Sahishnana. So false ego and pride is the single biggest acid which kind of destroys this creeper of our bhakti. It's the most harmful acid. It's literally an acid that destroys this little creeper that we're trying to grow, this creeper of our devotional life. And Krishna promises us one thing here. What is Krishna's promise? Yes, the translation is, engage your mind always in thinking of me, become my devotee, offer obeisances to me and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you'll come to me. So the promise is on the last line, the last phrase, where Krishna says, Atmanam Mad Parayana. And before that, the promise is, Mam e Vaishyasi. That's the promise, sorry. Mam e Vaishyasi. That's the promise. E Vaishyasi is attainment or come. It means he promises that you will come to me. You will attend me, given that you follow these directives that Krishna lays out. So that's the promise. Krishna says that because you are so dear to me, Krishna is not like some judge. From the from Chaitodarpana Marjanam, there's this second verse, where it is said that there are no hard and fast rules for chanting these names. You can be anywhere, you can be doing anything. You can just start to chant. You can chant Hare Krishna. It's so simple. There are no hard and fast rules for chanting these names. It's so easy how to do it. It's so easy to do devotional service. And that's what Krishna says here. He's not like some distant judge that we can be feared of. He's there to love us, and we are here to love him. We're here to do our devotional service. And that's how he says. He doesn't say that, do this or else I will do that to you. He gives us full freedom, full independence to do what we want. It's just we should take this extra step of trying to develop some devotion toward him. And then he says, he's a loving person. Krishna is a loving person. He's full of love. And he says, you are very dear to me. Therefore, I'm telling you the easiest way to come to me, because we are so dear to him. And because of this, it is known as the most confidential knowledge. This is the reason it is known as most confidential knowledge. Because to attain Krishna is impossible. It's practically impossible. Because so many countless people have tried, but none have achieved. Only those whom have proper surrender and whom Krishna bestowed his blessings, only those have achieved Krishna. Otherwise, there is no way to achieve the Supreme Person. In the Satya Yuga, people had to do penances, austerities for thousands of years, very hardcore penances. That's just to achieve the supreme. But in Kali Yuga, it's so easy. We just have to chant the names of the Lord. So that's how Krishna says. One can think, how do we live this verse as a lifestyle? How we can make this the motto of our life? That is, when we try to bring this verse into our life, we can, sometimes hear this instructions that, oh, this is wonderful, this is nice, but my life is very busy. I'm a very busy man. I've got so many things to do. I've got to live. I'm a very busy person. I have doubts. I have weaknesses. And how is this very practical to me? It needs to be practical, because in my practical life, this doesn't make sense, one may argue. But one needs to understand where this verse was spoken. It was spoken literally on a battlefield. Krishna spoke this verse to Arjuna. And in a battlefield, it is the most worrying place you can be. You are surrounded by enemies. You can get shot by an arrow at any moment. A battlefield is the most, this is the craziest place out there. And this verse was spoken there. So if this verse is applicable inside the battlefield, it can be applicable to our daily lives for sure, without difficulty. And that's how we understood how we can practically be thinking of Krishna. That is, apart from doing our japa, how we can practically, try to feel the presence of Krishna, try to feel the divinity, try to connect everything around us to Krishna. That's how we actually practice these instructions of man mana bhava bhakto, always thinking of Krishna. So this verse is meant for students who have very big exams. For example, like me, I have very tedious exams coming up, and I'm very scared at times, but I still have moments to think about Krishna. Even if I'm doing a very complex math question, I think, oh wow, such a complex thing. Imagine if such a tiny little knowledge is so complex. Imagine how complex would be Krishna's creation. This is unimaginable, so vast. In our tiny little brains, we cannot even comprehend the scale, the magnitude of this whole creation and everything. It's just how you can connect every tiny thing that's happening around you in your life to Krishna. That's the secret. That's the formula here. And that's how we understand, is this the most confidential knowledge? Because Krishna is literally giving us the easiest way. Suppose someone comes up to you and tells you, like, I have the most secret way, a secret idea to make €1 million. You'll be like, oh, tell me. That's what Krishna is doing here. So he's not telling us to go to the forest and do penances, austerities for thousands of years. He's not asking us to do anything. He's just asking us to give his time, like give our time for Krishna. Always think of Krishna. That is the most easiest, the most secretive way to attain Krishna. Because to attain Krishna is the most ultimate thing in our lives, or in any person's life, to attain the Supreme. And this is the most easiest way. That's why it is the most confidential knowledge, because it's very easy. And because Krishna says, you are very dear to me, I'm giving this secret to you, because he considers us his dear friend. That's what Krishna is saying. And so we can commit ourselves to have 4 regulations that we can understand from this verse. The first regulation, man mana, give Krishna our mind. Make Krishna the center of our mind. Man mana, that's the first regulation. Second regulation, mad bhakto, become my devotee. Our identity should be based on becoming his devotee. That's the second resolution. Third resolution, okay, the new year is coming up. We all have our new year resolutions, resolutions. Let's also try to fit the most secret thing in the whole universe into our New Year's resolution. So the third resolution is Madhyaji, give her time to worship me, to pay your obeisance unto me. And the final resolution is Mam Namaskuru, give up your false ego and pay your homage unto me. These are the resolutions he's asking for us. And in turn, Krishna promises that's what's the word, the Sanskrit word? Evaishyasi. That's the promise. Mam evaishyasi. So anytime, every time you feel kind of weak in a very worried state, just remember Krishna's promise. Krishna is there. He's actively there and trying to help us. And that will give you the strength to carry on. Whenever you feel this moment of despair, this moments of fragility in your devotional life, always remember this point, this promise. And Krishna never breaks his promise. That's for sure. So always have faith in Krishna. That Krishna is literally saying, this is my promise, that you will come to me. I will come for you. And that's how we know, and that's how we, kind of bring it all together. And we understand this very simple, yet the topmost thing. And this is essentially the whole nature or the whole discussion of this whole chapter. So the last verse of this chapter is practically summarizing the whole teaching of this whole chapter. And I would like to conclude with this note. And would you like to ask some questions or add any comments of your realizations or anything? Any of your... Yes, Prabhu?
I was reading the first part of the purport, and I found it very interesting. He's saying sometimes unscrupulous commentators distort the meaning of what is clearly stated here, that all devotional service should be offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Unfortunately, unscrupulous commentators divert the mind of the reader to that which is not at all feasible. Such commentators do not know that there is no difference between Krishna's mind and Krishna. So I would like to ask you what I didn't really understand. What are these comments of the?
Oh, okay. So the word unscrupulous means like having no moral principles or unethical. That's the meaning of the word unscrupulous. So when we say unscrupulous commentators, we are trying to say unethical commentators. In a way, they're unethical towards our devotional line, because maybe Prabhupada is trying to direct these kind of people as egoistic people that are trying to serve their own purpose. Like they're selfish, and they're trying to trying to misquote this verse to their own selfish goal. So maybe when Prabhupada says here that such commentators do not know that there is no difference between Krishna's mind and Krishna. Krishna is not an ordinary human being. We can understand that he is obviously talking about Mayavadis, because that when they say that Krishna, he was just a simple ordinary being who had this knowledge, and we are all God, and that's how they try to diminish the position of Krishna, and they try to portray themselves as God. And that's how this Mayavadic philosophy, and that's how it's the most dangerous thing for any person who is in this devotional life. So that's what Prabhupada means here, because he's targeting, or in a way he's attacking those unethical people who are trying to distort the message of Krishna. Prabhupada says such commentators do not know there is no difference between Krishna's mind and Krishna. So Krishna's mind and Krishna, there is no difference. For example, for us, there is a difference. We're a soul, and the mind is just a part of our subtle body. It's not us. But for Krishna, it's completely different. Krishna's body, Krishna's soul, Krishna's mind, Krishna's everything. Everything is Krishna. There is no distinction for Krishna. So the people who try to distinguish or diminish the quality of Krishna, they are the Mayavadis essentially, and that's what Prabhupada is trying to, make us aware, to not to, be in contact or hear from those unethical sources who try to prove a different meaning to satisfy their own selfish needs. Hare Krishna. Anyone else? Any comments? Okay, so we end here. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.